So the Polish Prime Minister has unveiled large-scale plans for air defense and deterrence, pledging to invest billions in security on the eastern border. Donald Tusk announced that Warsaw wants to join the European Sky Shield initiative, a German-led air defense network.
Moreover, Poland will allocate some $2.5 billion to build fortifications on its border with Russia and Belarus. And now, to tell us more about the initiative, we are joined by Sergey Sumlenny, Director of the European Resilience Initiative Center. Good evening, Sergey.
Good evening. Thank you for having invited me tonight.
Thank you for accepting it. So, we know what it will consist of. We know that most of the European countries are taking part in this project, but when will it be fully operational? And are all the countries participating in the project willing to pay for it?
Well, that are two crucial questions. You have perfectly mentioned them. We know that the European Union is often much faster in its words than its deeds. We remember 1 million artillery shells initiative of the European Union, 1 military shells for Ukraine have been promised until the April 24. Now we are in May 24. And I would be happy if 1/3 of that production has been reached. And now we hope and pray that until the end of this year, at least 1 million shells will be produced. And frankly speaking, producing 1 million artillery shells is a much easier task than to create a global or like a continent-wide air defense shield. The air defense shield, the idea came also not yesterday. There were these ideas by French and by German industries. The companies couldn't agree what equipment should be used, what zones of responsibility should be there, and. And we know that there are several fundamental flaws in European defense politics. First, every country tries, or most of the countries tries to lobby their own production. So the France says, okay, we want our tanks to be there. German says, no, our industry should be used, and. So the compatibility problem.
Mm-hmm. But how
then the cross-country, cross-border usage of the weapons, which is also not been solved, and so on.
Mm-hmm, right.
Now, how would that exactly work if let's say Poland is in trouble and they want to, defend our sky? We want to defend our skies, or any other country. Would we need permission from another country, or would all the countries need to agree on securing our sky? How do you think this will work?
Well, frankly speaking, nobody knows. Mm-hmm. And that is the most scary part, because, let us work with the examples which we know, or which we already like, not just working with them like with fresh ideas, but when we already have troops and foot on the ground. Germany's brigade in Lithuania, like first a battalion in Lithuania and now a brigade. As far as I understand, they don't have rules of engagement. That means that when tomorrow a Russian missile hits a location of a German brigade, or Russian tanks cross the border, the German commander doesn't know what to do. And he or she will need to ask permission from Berlin. Let's pray that the communication functions. Let's pray that the chancellor doesn't sleep. Let's pray, and. So regarding the defense shield, we have enjoyed 30 years of peace after the end of the Cold War in Europe, and frankly speaking, we have already lost the generation of politicians who knew the answers, who were prepared for a full-scale attack by the Soviet forces and along the east flank. So the answer is we do not know, because once again, let us imagine the Russian missiles are flying over Poland and get targeted and located. Will the German jets from Germany come to scramble them? We don't know. Mm-hmm. We have already seen the case when Russian drones were violating Romania airspace, a NATO member, and flying from the Black Sea through the Romanian airspace. And a German team from German Luftwaffe has followed them over the Romanian airspace. So it's a clear violation of Romanian airspace by unmanned military targets, and the German jets have never got a permission to shut them down from the NATO command, because the German, it was not a Bundeswehr or Luftwaffe mission, it was a mission within the NATO, and they didn't get a permission to shoot them down. So they accompanied them until the drones exited again the Romanian airspace and hit targets on Ukrainian side. So we see that a clear case when Luftwaffe and Air Force should have shot down unmanned vehicles, it just didn't work because the communication was like not ready for that. In a transit flying Russian drones, Russia obviously didn't have an intention to hit Romania, but we don't know what will happen tomorrow. How will it happen? Like, will the German Luftwaffe, or I don't know, the Czech Air Force or other Air Force, will they coordinate with their commanders until the Russian missile which they accompany hit Warsaw? We don't know. That is the answer.
That's a key issue that has to be resolved, probably, right?
I guess there are many uncertainties here. You know, big news in Poland is that our government decided to allocate some 300 million euros for the satellite component of the shield. And to remind our viewers, last month Russia vetoed the UN Security Council's resolution on banning arms race in outer space. Well, the US is concerned that Russians are working on a weapon, a sort of a nuclear weapon that's able to take down satellites, right? So if we have this European shield that consists of also of satellites, and if Russians are able to take them down, so will it pose any sort of obstacle for the Russian army?
Well, I think that, of course, there are a lot of options. We can speculate about like how far the Russians are ready to go in unconventional means of warfare, including like letting a nuke explode in the space, so the electromagnetic impulse would destroy the satellites which are flying in the space. The Russians openly discuss such options, but I think that we still need to concentrate on the primary steps. First, who funded? Second, who is in command? Third, what is the rule of engagement of this shield? And then how fast can we build it? We know that the orders for production of weapons, I'm sorry for coming back always to Germany, it's just my country, I know it a bit better, I know the problems of my country, it's fair to criticize own country. We know that in Germany, a lot of industry companies which would ready to produce weapons to fill German stocks, like producers of Taurus missiles, do not get orders from the government. And in Germany, it is a law, and in most European countries also, that a military producer may not produce weapons just to fill the stock for a case when someone comes and says, hey guy, do you have like 100 missiles? I will organize a permission from the government that I buy them. If you have them on stock, I buy them tomorrow. No, it's not the case. First, the order must come, it must be approved by the state, and then the order is being given to the company. Then they produce. That creates a delay. So currently, none of the companies can start with produced components. And we know from the experience from a Russian-Ukrainian war that the crucial bottleneck of any air lack of interceptor missiles. And the current problem with the Ukrainian air defense, that the ratio of destroyed Russian missiles has dropped from 95%, 90% to 30%, just because the Ukrainians don't have enough missiles. And believe me, we don't have them also for the case when Russian air forces start to bombard us massively. So that is another problem. And after all, like, will the Russians use nuclear device in space, like, to shut down our satellites? Frankly speaking, I'm more concerned about the destructive potential of Russian agents and assets and spies.
Well then, Sergey, let's get back from outer space down to earth, because I have one last question to you. The defensive line is to be built on the Polish border with Belarus and Russia. Poland wants to spend some $2.5 billion on this very project. So what has the current war in Ukraine taught the Western commanders about the effectiveness of such defensive lines?
Well, it is always better to have a defense than don't have it. And of course, Poland's eastern flank must be protected. We know that Russia and Belarus tried to undermine it with unconventional means, like using human waves of people who they brought to Belarus, promising them everything and practically using them, fooling them and using them as a weapon against the EU. And of course, it's better to have a defensive line than not to have. But the crucial decisiveness of any like defense is: are you ready and do you have capacities to hit the enemy forces which are being accumulated on your border to attack you? And the Kharkiv offensive of the Russians has shown that the fact that Ukraine could not attack Russian forces being accumulated on Russian territory in Belgorod region has caused Ukrainians loss of many troops in Kharkiv offensive before the Ukrainians have managed to stop this offensive, and loss of several villages there. So that could be a case. The good news is that, of course, Poland is a NATO member, and there will be like no question if a NATO member may fight back with all the weapons it has. And as long as Ukraine stands, the front line will be pretty narrow, and that is also good news for everyone. But if Ukraine fails, if Russians manage to force Ukraine under some sort of frozen conflict, ceasefire, etc., that would be really bad news, because then Russia can accumulate resources and wait for the good moment to strike.
And so the bottom line is always better to have this defense line than not to have it. Sergey Sumlenny, the director of the European Resilience Center, was our guest tonight. Thank you so much, Sergey.